Karibu viewers to this week's episode of Loadshedding, a show where we discuss current affairs pertaining to Africa.
As usual, we shall be discussing something positive, something controversial, we'll have a head-scratching section, and at the end we shall have the must-watch in our Loadshedding Favorite. My name is Kees.
And I'm Ivory from the Bone. The Nigerian Minister of Science and Technology, Ogbonnaya Onu, has proclaimed that by 2030 at the latest, Nigeria will have an astronaut enter space.
Now, we know that there have been certain scam mails being sent, or spam mails being sent over the internet, where a certain Nigerian astronaut called Abache Tunde has been stuck in space since, get this, 1989.
Yeah, and he needs $3 million to come back down to Earth. But not to worry, if you do send him some money, he will pay you back because he has a trust fund waiting for him here on Earth that he just cannot access from space. So not to worry. But the Nigerian government is doing no such scam, that we know for sure.
Yeah, this is for real, right?
Yes, no, the Nigerian government was for real. Nothing to do with Abache Tunde.
Okay, cool. Mr. Onu has said that the federal government will go to great length to ensure that Nigerian astronauts will enter space on or before 2030, as he says that a space program is important for a country like Nigeria.
Do you know that Nigeria is not the first African country that has pledged to go to space?
No, Ivory, I had no idea. Which other African country has astronauts?
Well, it's actually your country, Kees, Zambia.
Really?
Yes, Kees. In 1962, a Zambian science teacher by the name of Edward Makuka Nkoloso single-handedly started a space program which he claimed would take Zambia to space before America and the USSR. But, of course, this space program was not supported by the Zambian government at the time.
Well, kudos to him for trying. Did he make it? Well, I'm pretty sure that the Nigerian government does mean business. Nigeria and South Africa have the biggest economies on the continent. In fact, South Africa started its own space agency back in 2010. The agency is called South African National Space Agency.
Well, if there's any two countries that can have the first Africans in space, I'd put my money on those two.
Mwenda Mbera, a Goromonzi villager of Zimbabwe, has been arrested for allegedly insulting President Robert Mugabe, which happened at a local bar. He has been summoned to Murewa Magistrates Court. Mbera is accused to have allegedly said, "I don't know why people from ZANU-PF are still thin because of poverty. When we voted in 2013 and this asshole called Mugabe won, I then knew that we are going to suffer, but I have been hardened."
There are quite a lot of similar cases. Just recently, Edson Chua, a headmaster at Shamva Primary School, was also arrested. His offense was that he posted an edited picture of Mugabe and Rihanna. According to law enforcement, the picture on Facebook made Mugabe and Rihanna look like they were in love.
To make it worse, Lenman Paniwa, a member of the development committee of the school where Chua presides, was also arrested for allegedly clicking like in response on Facebook to the image. Zimbabwe Chimga, who is a lawyer for Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights and represents both Chua and Paniwa, has approached the Constitutional Court in a bid to scrap the law that states insulting the president is a crime, exclaiming that this is a joke. Freedom of speech means people have a right to criticize and even poke fun at political leaders. To criminalize such acts is just ridiculous, Chimka has said.
Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights have recorded more than 60 cases of this nature since 2010. Even law enforcers are not let off from this, as earlier this March, police officer Thompson Joseph Mloy was arrested after allegedly saying that Mugabe was too old to rule.
There is a widespread consensus amongst human rights organizations that systematic violations occur towards people's personal right to freedom and integrity in Zimbabwe, especially towards people of the supposed opposition. The violations are perpetrated by supporters of the government as well as law enforcement agencies, and some of the methods used are assaults, death threats, kidnappings, unlawful detentions, and arrests.
Over the years, opposition figures and others have been indicted for calling Mugabe a goblin, a rotten old donkey, and a homosexual. Noteworthy to say is that the prosecution had to withdraw the charges in many cases because they failed to establish an offense, says Chimka of the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. According to the Human Rights Watch report, "You Will Be Thoroughly Beaten, the Brutal Suppression of Dissent in Zimbabwe," laws such as the Public Order and Security Act and the Miscellaneous Offences Act are used to violently disrupt peaceful demonstrations and justify the arrest of civil society activists. In some cases, the activists are held for much longer than the legally allowed limit, often without charge.
Well, making fun of Mugabe, President Mugabe, is risky business in Zimbabwe, with such a law that forbids the undermining of or insulting the president. Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is also Justice Minister, has defended the law as necessary to prevent the breach of public order and public safety. Ironically, the new Zimbabwean constitution, approved by parliament back in 2013, May 2013 that is, enshrines respect for the rule of law and commits the government to fully implement and realize the right to freedom of association, assembly, expression, and information. Now, people thought that this new constitution would bring around a change in the arrests going on, but at this moment, this could not be further from the truth. Moving on to this week's head-scratching topic.
What would you do if your child went to school and was burned by teachers for allegedly engaging in devil worshipping? 2 teachers at Strait School in Nairobi, Kenya, burned a 17-year-old girl with polythene bags and kerosene for just that reason. The girl's hands and feet were tied, and it was demanded that she disclose the whereabouts of another student. When she said she didn't know the other student, she was set ablaze and accused of devil worshipping. The incident took place in the staff room with the principal watching.
You know, this is terrible. The children at school should not be going through this. Teachers are supposed to be second parents. You need to trust them with your children.
You know, Kees, it's interesting you should say that about people who should be trusted, because News 24 mentioned another story of a 13-year-old girl who was burned by members of her church in Nakuru County during what they referred to as an exorcism. The poor girl was doused with paraffin and then set on fire to expel demons from her body. It was later discovered that she was pregnant after being raped by one of her tormentors. It was all just one big cover-up.
Maybe those teachers were covering up something as well. Although witchcraft is used to cover up certain crimes, let's not forget that witchcraft is still very strongly present in Africa at large.
That's right. You know, in 2013, Swaziland passed a law that banned witches from flying on their broomsticks above 150 meters. Now, anyone caught flying above 150 meters could face arrest and a fine. And this information was released by Swaziland's civil aviation authorities.
Well, you know, I mean, that does make sense. Flying over 150 meters without a seatbelt is very dangerous. Safety first.
Yeah.
In Tanzania, the Legal and Human Rights Center estimated that 500 people are lynched every year for being witches, with most being elderly women. The same is true for Ghana, where over 2,000 people are accused of witchcraft and are confined in 5 different camps with their dependents. Most are elderly, destitute women, and some have lived there for decades.
Children are victims too. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the United Nations Human Rights Office estimated that between 25 and 50,000 children were living as street kids because they have been accused of witchcraft and chased by their families.
Apart from abusing the human rights of children and adults in the Central African Republic, as of 2010, 40% of the cases brought before the CAF courts were in relations to witchcraft.
Well, you know, what stands out to me is that Poverty seems to be the main factor here in people being accused of sorcery. It seems as though when families are unable to take care of children or the elderly, they cry witchcraft.
Now, apart from the fact that witchcraft is heavily rooted into the African culture, UNICEF attributes the growing problem to urbanization, weakening family structures, the HIV crisis, poverty, and the growing burden of raising children.
Well, it certainly doesn't help when governments pass legislation that legitimizes the existence of witchcraft. Social aid and education might help the problem, but it certainly wouldn't be a bad step for them to also, pass legislation that bans witch hunts. On to this week's Loadshedding Favorite.
As you may well know, a group of 6 gunmen opened fire at the Grand-Bassam beach resort in Ivory Coast, killing 16 people. In defiance, a group of musicians called Collective Bassam teamed up together writing a song called Même pas peur, in defiance to Al-Qaeda.
Même pas peur means not even afraid. The song in general condemns Al-Qaeda and their ideology. It features lyrics such as, Ivory Coast has been hit, but we are not falling down, and you kill innocent people for lost causes. Importantly, it highlights that Islam teaches love, peace, and tolerance. I like that that was pointed out because it shows that Al-Qaeda has got a warped interpretation of Islam. Especially at a time like this, it's important to make sure that the everyday Muslim is not indirectly or directly associated with extremist or radicalist groups like Al-Qaeda.
Yes, in last week's episode we spoke of Liberia becoming a Christian state. And Liberia is right next door to Ivory Coast. So a fear of extremist groups should not turn into a fear of Muslims. Music is a powerful tool that helps people come together and gives them hope and strength in desperate situations. Be sure to listen to it.
That's it from us this week. Please don't forget to give us your opinions on the topics we've discussed today because your thoughts matter to us. And please also let us know how to greet in your language.
Also, please don't forget to place your comments at the bottom as to how we can improve or let us know what you think we should talk about in the near future. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube and on Twitter, and see you next week. That's Ivory van der Boom.
And that's Kees Kivinda.
And remember, if the power goes,
Load shedding.